What's up, y'all? It's Celeste. I know I haven't made a video in a while, and I have a whole bunch that I had promised that I would make, especially all the stuff about tongue tie, because I had my frenectomy in December, and then I was going to be making a whole bunch of videos about that, and I actually filmed a bunch of stuff and took all kinds of pictures, but I just have not had the chance or the time to actually edit it all completely, and it's a little overwhelming. So I promise I will get to that eventually. I'm sorry for those who have been waiting on that, but I've had a lot of other stuff going on, which is what I'm going to be talking about in this video, especially to do with my health, because I just have a lot going on with my health right now, and it's not great. It's not awful. It's not like I have any, hugely, terminal illness or anything like that, as far as I know, but I just have a lot of chronic problems that are not only not getting better, but a lot of them are getting worse, and I'm trying to kind of solve the puzzle of exactly what's going on, and it's just taking a really long time. So I mentioned this in one of my tongue tie videos and then also on Instagram, but I did a sleep study last year because during the summer last year especially, I was having just horrible sleep. I was having trouble falling asleep, and then once I would fall asleep, I would just wake up over and over and over again all night, and I was not getting enough rest. It was just awful. And so I had a sleep study, and that supposedly showed that I didn't have any sleep apnea or anything like that. And so my doctor that I went to for that, then his next idea was to test my iron levels to see if I had an iron deficiency that would maybe cause I know that can cause leg cramping and stuff like that, which I don't really have restless leg, but I did have a lot of physical pain during the night and the urge to tense my muscles and stuff. That was actually part of what was keeping me up. It wasn't the only thing, but it was part of what was keeping me up and waking me up. And then I was having trouble going back to sleep because I would wake up and just needed to move. I don't know. It was a whole thing. Anyway, so he tested my iron levels. So I got those tested in November, and it showed that my ferritin was low. And I didn't really understand a lot about iron until I had this test and then started looking into it. But just to give you a little bit of a background, obviously there are iron levels in your blood and in your body that are necessary for your health. Iron is involved in getting oxygen around your body through your bloodstream and some other stuff. And so there's iron, which you already know about. But there are a bunch of other levels that they can test for iron, including ferritin, which is basically your iron stores. So it's kind of like you have your iron that you're using right now, and then you have kind of a backup, in the vault for when that runs out. And once your ferritin starts getting low, once that runs out, then that's kind of a lot of times an early sign of iron deficiency, because that'll run out first, and then your iron that you're continuing to take in, you're taking it in, but you no longer have a backup, so then that starts to go down, and so that's kind of the trajectory that happens a lot of the time. So my ferritin was low, but my other iron levels were okay, and there are a couple other things that they can test in your blood that tend to indicate some problem with your iron, including your hemoglobin and hematocrit and some other stuff to do with your blood cell size and count and things like that. And I get those tested all the time because that's part of a typical CBC, complete blood count. And I get that done just routinely all the time for pretty much anytime I get blood work done. I get that done because, I don't know, just that's the kind of thing that gets tested a lot. So those are always pretty much normal. The only thing that's a little out of the ordinary sometimes is my mean platelet volume is often a little bit high. It's a little bit high out of range. It's not super astronomically high above that, but it's usually I think the range goes to 12 point something, and mine is usually 13 point something. And I've asked about that before, and nobody ever has seemed really concerned about it. And pretty much most of my other stuff is usually pretty normal. So there wasn't really any indication that I would have an iron deficiency until I got my actual iron and ferritin levels checked in November. And that was when my ferritin was low. So my ferritin was low, but all the other stuff was okay. And so then it was a little questionable what the actual problem was, because I know this is kind of complicated, but just because your ferritin is low, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should just take a bunch of iron and that'll fix it. Like, a lot of times that's what they do, but sometimes it can indicate some other problem. And so if you just start taking iron, then that can actually mask some other problem. And so it's not generally a good idea to just like take a bunch of iron and just assume that'll fix it. But the doctor that had ordered those tests, the sleep doctor, I had thought that I had a follow-up scheduled with him, but it turned out I didn't. So by the time I realized that, it had already been like a month or two since I had the test done. And so I didn't actually really like that doctor very much. I didn't really connect with him, and I also just didn't really have like a huge amount of confidence in him. I had just started going to him when I had the sleep study, and he's one of those doctors where you go in and you don't really feel like he really wants to spend that much time with you or explain anything to you. It's kind of like in and out, that kind of thing. And I didn't really care to go back to him. So instead, I just called my primary care doctor and decided to just talk to her about it. But actually, shortly before I had my appointment with her, I had some other things come up. So pause on the iron levels, although it is related to this other stuff, and I'll come back to that in a second. So if you've been following me on Instagram, you know I've been running. I started running like around March of last year, but then because I live in Florida where it's very hot, I had to stop in May, and then I didn't start back until October because it's just way too hot during that period for me. So I've sort of been running, let's just say I've been running since like October, even though I ran a little bit before that. And I've been trying to fix a whole bunch of stuff with that, like my running form and changing my shoes and doing a bunch of stuff because I have a whole bunch of kind of chronic leg pain, foot pain, which I've had that kind of ongoing. It didn't start when I started running. I already had it, but running sometimes has exacerbated it. Since I've made adjustments, that part has gotten better, but it still tends to get like, it's not just sore from running. It's not like just sore from using the muscles. It's like lots of trigger points and like aching and just like difficulty with like everyday tasks basically. Which again, I had that before I started running. So it's not like I already had that and I'm already kind of used to that in a sense, but it has been exacerbated a lot by the running. So that's one thing. The other thing that I've been dealing with is I got this fitness tracker, which is a Mi Band 5, which is one of the cheaper options. It's not like an Apple Watch or anything like that, but it seems to be pretty accurate as far as at least things that I can compare it against other stuff. So like I tested the heart rate with like against a pulse oximeter, actually 2 different pulse oximeters and a blood pressure monitor, and it was pretty close to all of those. So I felt like I could pretty well trust the heart rate on it at least. And when I run, I always track my runs with this, and it includes like heart rate tracking during that. And my heart rate is pretty high already, and it's been getting higher over the last like year or so, and especially when I run, it just like goes way up. And like I would leave my house and like start jogging from my driveway. I live in a cul-de-sac, so like I go out the cul-de-sac and then like down the little like short street that is like the little entrance to the cul-de-sac basically. It's not a long street at all. Like I go down that and then cross the street to the other side of the cross street there, and like by the time I got there, I would already be at like 150, 160 beats per minute, which is really high for not hardly actually doing anything. That didn't happen every time, but that like I would get pretty, like my heart rate would go up pretty fast, pretty high, pretty fast, pretty much every time I went out. And even when I would like run for a short period and then start walking and like walk a huge portion of it, it would take a really long time for my heart rate to come back down. And it was just like, my max heart rate was like 198 some days, and I'm not like that great of a runner, so it's not like I was like going super fast. My pace is like, I think my average pace is somewhere around like 12 to 13 minutes per mile, which is, you know, not completely awful, but it's not at all like what most runners would consider a good pace. So, you know, it's where I am right now, and that's fine, I guess. But it's not like I was like, you know, really going fast, and so that it would make sense that my heart rate would be up really high. Anyway, that was a little worrisome, although mostly it was just annoying because I would get really out of breath really fast and I couldn't actually run the whole part of the running, which part of that is because of my foot and leg pain, and then the other part is because of the breathing. So I would try to breathe as well as I could. I mostly tried to breathe through my nose, although that doesn't really work when you can't breathe enough. So I started like trying to work on that. I got the book The Oxygen Advantage by Patrick McKeown, and I like believe in that method and everything, but I just like, I'm not able to do that even yet. So I've just been really struggling with that, and just generally kind of like being out of breath really fast and having really high heart rate all the time. And I gave blood a few times last year, which I maybe shouldn't have done now that I know about this iron thing, because, you know, that's a lot of blood loss, but I didn't know that. So when you go to give blood, they check your pulse to make sure it's okay for you to do that, and it has to be under 100, at least at the place that I go, it has to be under 100 or 100 or less in order for them to let you do it. So every single time I've gone to give blood, which I think is like either 4 or 5 times, I can't remember, about in the last year, I have had to get my pulse checked twice, because every time when they first check it, it's like over 100. The last time I went, I think it was like 114 or something. And this is just me like literally sitting in a chair and not doing anything. Like I would walk in, check in, and then like go sit in a chair for a while, and then they would come check my pulse, and it was like 114 and I'm just sitting there, which is pretty high for just a resting heart rate. And so then I would have to sit there and try to do some breathing and stuff, which is really hard when you have a mask on and when you're anxious because you want your heart rate to be lower. And anyway, it just was a whole thing. So I eventually was able to give blood all the times and stuff, but it was like barely at 100. And I think a couple of times they actually like, I think it was probably like 101 or 102, and they like just let it slide. Anyway, because of the breathing and the heart rate thing when running, I started looking into a bunch of stuff like the Oxygen Advantage. And then the other thing is different forms of heart rate training, where you figure out your maximum heart rate, and then you have like these different zones that you try to stay in the aerobic zone, which is like a lower heart rate. And so you basically like slow way down so you can like build up your aerobic capacity, and then eventually you'll be able to run faster. There's all kinds of stuff about that on the internet if you want to look that up. I don't want to go too much into it here, but anyway, I wanted to try to do that, and I tried to do it on my own using some different formulas, and I just like couldn't do it because of what I said earlier. Like I literally would get across the street and already be like way above my the range that I was supposed to be in as like my maximum heart rate, and I had like barely even started. So there was no way I was going to be able to do that. So instead of just using formulas, kind of and guessing, which is like based on your age and some other things like that, you can actually go get a VO2 max test done, which is where you run on a treadmill. They have you hooked up to an oxygen mask, like an oxygen measuring mask, and it's basically measuring like the maximum amount of oxygen that you can use when you are exercising, because when you're exercising, like, and you increase the intensity over time, you eventually will get to a point where you are not able to use any more oxygen than you're breathing in. And so you're actually like, you're breathing in oxygen, but it's not actually being distributed any more than it was before, but you are now burning carbon dioxide. So basically it just measures like a ratio. And it's that particular figure that they find by doing that is kind of like used as a measure of cardiorespiratory health. And then once you have that, you can use that to figure out like your other heart rate training zones. So I wanted to go do that, and I found a place in Orlando that does that called DexaFit. And so I wanted to get that done. At the same place, they also do DEXA scans for body composition, and DEXA scans are basically a giant x-ray. It x-rays your entire body, and it somehow, by doing that, it's able to determine the composition of your body, like how much of your body is bone, how much is fat, how much is like lean muscle, and all this, you know, the kind of stuff that you can do, body mass, not body mass index, body fat percentage, you can do with calipers, or you can do with, you know, different kinds of, like there's in-body scans, and there's like a bunch of different things like that you can get your body composition tested, but DEXA scans are considered kind of the gold standard. It's supposed to be the most accurate. And so I wanted to get that done, and I was able to find a Groupon deal where I was able to actually get both of those tests done, and I was able to get kind of a discount on it. So I decided to go ahead and get those both done at the same time. And I went to the place and I actually filmed a bunch of stuff there, and I was intending to just like go and do it and then make a little video about it, and I am still planning to do that eventually, but as I said before, I'm a little behind on my videos. So the other reason why I haven't done it is because the results that I got from doing those things were not really what I expected. I didn't really know what to expect exactly for my body fat percentage. I've been doing that with calipers, and I also did it with an in-body scan when I was going to CrossFit. They did it one time there, and the number that came up with that was pretty comparable to what I was doing with calipers, which Jason actually is the one who does a lot of it because you can't really do it on yourself very easily. And so we were doing pretty well with that, I thought, and so I thought my caliper measurements were probably pretty good. But the body fat percentage that came up on the DEXA scan was quite a bit higher than I thought it would be. It still was like within like, average range. It wasn't like high by any means, but it was higher than I expected. So that was a little disappointing. But even more than that, I wasn't even really thinking about bone density like at all when I got this DEXA scan done, even though that's what DEXA scans were actually originally created for. They were used by just radiologists. My dad is a radiologist, a retired radiologist, and he used to do them. And so it's more often done for bone density typically for older people, but also, other people who are at risk for osteoporosis and things like that. It basically just figures out how dense your bones are, because when you have osteoporosis, you have bone loss and your bones get less dense. They can actually measure that using a DEXA scan. So even though I knew that's what it was for, I didn't really think that much about it because I didn't think I was at risk for osteoporosis or bone loss. But guess what? It turns out that I have bone loss. And when I actually had the scans done, when I had the scan done and the VO2 max test done, I had them put me in as male because that's how I've been doing the body fat percentages myself. I've been using the male. Actually, I've been doing both of them just to see, but they've been pretty close. But usually I kind of base it on the male formula. So I had them put me in as male, and because of that, the bone density, like the results that I got back from that, were actually worse than they seemed worse than they actually are. So I was really scared for a few days until I decided to have them check that, and they gave me another version of it with the female formula on it. But basically, my bone mineral density, BMD, the way that they measure that is they measure the amount, the density of various points in your body, and then they compare those against this enormous database that they have of it's 10,000 or 20,000 people that they have. Basically, they have this huge database, this whole pool of people, and using that, create this kind of average of, there's one that's supposed to be an average 30-year-old, I think, and I think it's probably an average 30-year-old female, because that's just how they designed it when they originally did this. And then that's the T-score, and then there's a Z-score, which measures you against the average for your age and sex. And so because of that, that was why I decided to have them give me the other version, because I thought that the Z-score would probably be different because it's measured against your own sex, and obviously I'm not actually male, I'm also not actually female, and by that I don't just mean my gender identity, but physically I'm not actually either one anymore either, because I'm on testosterone and that changes things. So anyway, on the male version, my T-score was minus 2.6 and my Z-score was minus 2.1, which is not very good. That means you have osteoporosis. And so that's why I was really scared for a few days. But the female one is better than that, still not great. It was, the T-score was minus 1.4 and the Z-score was minus 1.5, and that means you don't have osteoporosis, but you have bone loss, and that's also called osteopenia, which basically means you've already lost some bone and you're kind of on the road to osteoporosis if things don't change. So that was really surprising to me and upsetting to me because, first of all, I'm not that old. I'm 39, which, yeah, is getting a little closer to the age of, like, starting to lose some bone, but I should not have osteopenia at this age. Second of all, I am fairly active. I'm not, like, you know, super athletic fitness person, but I'm fairly active. I do work out. I have been working out with weights and with running and all this stuff for, I've only been doing the running for a little while, but I've been working out with weights for like 5 or 6 years now, and weight-bearing exercise is one of the things that helps prevent bone loss. I also don't drink, I don't smoke, I eat pretty healthily, I get plenty of calcium, and basically just like did not think that I was at risk for this at all. And now that I know that I have some bone loss, I was like, what the heck? Why would I have bone loss when I don't really fit into most of the risk factors for it? And then on the VO2 max, I expected that to be awful. It actually was maybe not as bad as I thought it would be, but it wasn't great. On that, they find your VO2 max, and then to figure out like how bad that actually is or how good that actually is, they have different charts for males and females for different age groups, and you basically compare it against that. So once again, I don't really know exactly which one to pick because I'm kind of in between, but if I were male, my VO2 max would be considered below average, and if I were female, it would be considered average. So that wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but still wasn't great. So the combination of all of these things made me really feel like there must be some underlying reason for all of this that is somehow like tied together, that there must be some reason why I'm low in iron, why I have bone loss, and why I am having trouble with my heart rate and breathing and various other stuff like the pains and sleep problems and all kinds of stuff like that. And so I tried to kind of figure out what possibilities there could be. And the two kind of speculations that I came up with are, one would be some kind of absorption problem, and that would explain why I get plenty of calcium and still have bone loss, and why I get plenty of iron but still have low iron. Also, last year I had my vitamin D tested. I'm not actually sure why that was ordered for me, but I'm glad that it was because it turned out it was low, and that was surprising because I drink a whole bunch of almond milk that's vitamin D fortified, and I eat several other things that are vitamin D fortified, and I don't spend a lot of time in the sun, but I spend, some time in the sun. I live in Florida, so it shouldn't have been low, but it was. So I started taking a vitamin D supplement, and then I had it retested, and it did go up. It still was kind of low-ish in the range, but at least it was in the range. And so there are just things like that. Also, my sodium is often either slightly low, like below the range, or like on the very low end of the range, even though I get plenty of sodium. Also, like, there are all these things that I get plenty of, but am just, for some reason, don't have in my, like, blood serum levels. And so that indicates to me that there is some kind of absorption problem. So that's one possibility. The other possibility that I thought of is I was growth hormone deficient as a child and took growth hormone for that, and eventually grew to a normal height and had normal development and all that stuff. But it is possible that I am still growth hormone deficient, and so if I were, then that would actually be like that. Having growth hormone deficiency is one of the things that actually does put you at risk for osteoporosis and for bone loss. It's also possible that even if I'm not currently growth hormone deficient anymore, that having been as a child and during part of my adolescence, that would have made me not either lose some bone then, or like not form as much bone, or anyway, it could have some kind of impact on my bone density. So those are some possibilities that I've thought of. And so when I actually eventually did talk to my primary care doctor, so I'm kind of coming back to that now, I did have my appointment with her, and I brought both of those things up. And so she referred me to an endocrinologist to go to about my growth hormone deficiency. I haven't actually seen anybody about that yet, but she also ordered a whole bunch of blood tests for me to check other stuff, including like some other stuff like thyroid levels and things like that. And then also celiac panel, which came back negative. So that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't have celiac, but it's probably means I don't have celiac. It's not really a definitive test. It's more like kind of an indicator that, at least my understanding of it is, like, if that turns out positive, then they do like a more accurate study, which is where they actually do like a biopsy of part of your intestine and check that. And that's the only way they can really know for sure if you have celiac, but I'm pretty sure it would be fairly unlikely for me to test negative and then end up actually still having celiac. It's possible, but I don't think it's very likely. So I'm hoping I don't have celiac because I really don't want to have to go gluten-free. But I think it's definitely possible that I have some other similar kind of thing, or like leaky gut or something like that, something where I'm not absorbing things properly. So I just got my test results back from all of the things that she ordered last week, so I haven't actually talked to her yet. I have an appointment scheduled with her next week. But one of the things she retested was my iron levels and my ferritin levels. And guess what? They are even lower than they were in November. So not only is my ferritin lower than it was, which it was already like really low, it was 10, and the reference range starts at 16. Although from what I've read, like, that's technically the start of the reference range. And some other labs use other ranges starting at like 12 or something like that. But even that is like, even though it's technically in the range, like really it should be more like 40 or 50, especially for an active person. And so mine was 10, and now it's 8, which is even worse. And also, like, all my other iron levels are low, like the actual amount of iron, the saturation, and the binding capacity is not any lower. That's normal, but like all of the other things are low, and they really have dropped a lot since November. And I have taken iron a little bit since then. Like, I took it for a while, and then I stopped for a while, and then I took it for a while. I keep getting mixed messages on whether I should be taking it or not from different people that I've talked to, like different providers that I've talked to, partly because I'm on testosterone, and testosterone typically increases your iron levels. So it's actually like not necessarily recommended to take iron if you're on testosterone, if you don't, like, especially if you don't need it, because you can get your iron levels too high. So I didn't want that to happen. So anyway, I have taken iron during the period since November, but not that entire time. So it should not have dropped. Definitely should not have dropped as much as it has. So it's getting pretty worrisome. Like, I definitely have a pretty major iron deficiency, but my hemoglobin is still normal. My hematocrit is still normal. And so it seems like I don't actually have anemia, which I used to think that anemia and iron deficiency were the same, but they're actually not. You can have iron deficiency without anemia, and I'm pretty sure that's what I have. But until I talk to my doctor, I don't really know exactly for sure, like, what is going on. And, you know, even when I talk to her, like, it's not going to be, like, we're not going to really know what's going on, but at least we can start narrowing things down and, like, get some more tests done, or, like, I don't know, go see somebody else or whatever. Like, I have an appointment scheduled with the endocrinologist for a few weeks, and like, the more time has passed, the more I'm feeling like it's probably more likely a digestive thing, like an absorption problem, and not growth hormone deficiency. But I haven't ruled out that it could be growth hormone deficiency, but I think it's less likely because there are some other things that happen when you have growth hormone deficiency as an adult that I don't have, including usually your lipid levels are really bad, like your cholesterol is really bad, and mine are really pretty good. And also there tends to be obesity, especially visceral fat, which is the fat around your stomach, like not just like subcutaneous fat, which is like right near the skin, but like deep, like around your organs. And I have 0 of that according to my DEXA scan that I just had done. And there's just some like things like that. But there are also some symptoms of adult growth hormone deficiency that I definitely do have. So that was kind of one of the reasons why I started thinking that could be a factor, or that could be the possibility. And I maybe should get it retested just to see. But most of those things also coincide with iron deficiency. So I think it's more likely that it's probably from that. And if so, that means that I've probably had an iron deficiency for a really long time, because I've had all of those things for a really long time. Not necessarily as much the heart rate and oxygen stuff, but like all the other things I've had like my entire life. So that would not be great. From what I've read, the longer you are in iron deficiency, the harder it is to get out of, and some people never get out of it. So hopefully I'm not one of those people. So anyway, all of this has been very overwhelming and exhausting, especially since I already am exhausted all the time. I have like no energy. I'm tired all the time. I'm barely doing anything. I still have continued to try to exercise like as much as I can. Like I've been running and stuff. So it's not like I have 0 energy, but basically I start out the day and I have some energy, and then it gets used up pretty fast. And then like pretty much the whole rest of the day, I'm just like dead. And I don't just mean physically, I mean like mental energy, emotional energy. It gets used up early in the day. And then, you know, by like midday, I am so exhausted, so drained. It's just hard for me to even think. It's hard for me to do anything. I just don't want to, like, I've lost all motivation. So it's just been really hard to get much done, other than things that I do really early in the morning, which is when I work out, and often when I go to doctor's appointments and things like that. So like I'm still able to like go do stuff like that, but once that's done, like it's harder for me to get much else done during the day, including making videos and things like that. Plus, my concentration has not been as good. My like ability to remember words has kind of suffered some, and just things like that. So that's kind of a little summary of why I have fallen behind on everything, even more than usual, like even more than my usual ADHD, falling behind on everything, procrastinating everything, etc. But now it's gotten even worse, and just my general physical health has not been that great, which is frustrating because like it's been pretty good in other ways, but definitely not a lot of ways that make it hard to just do much. And then I've also had all this like chronic pain throughout my body, but especially my feet and legs, which, you know, it's not like I can't walk around the house or anything, and I can like still make myself run, even though a lot of times it hurts. But it's just like it does make it harder to do things when you're physically in pain and tired all the time. And it's not just that like I'm hurting so I don't want to do stuff. It's that trying to attend to all of these different health problems takes a lot of time and energy. With, first of all, like my feet and legs, I've been doing a lot of like self-massage and then like strengthening exercises, like all kinds of stuff, like trying to get this figured out. That takes up a lot of time. Doing a lot of research online takes up a lot of time, and just lots of stuff just takes so much time and energy that I just don't have as much left over anymore for like anything fun, really. Like, luckily, I actually enjoy studying stuff about the body and learning stuff about the body. So it is like something I'm actually really like fascinated with and passionate about. So that's a plus. But I don't really have any hobbies anymore. Like, I'm not really doing anything just for fun that isn't like something to do with, like, I do things that are enjoyable, but it's not like I don't really do anything that's like just like to like, I don't know, that it, I guess like all hobbies are kind of like self-enriching and stuff. So it's not like, I don't really know how to describe it. But anyway, I'm not doing anything like just for fun exactly. I just don't have time anymore. Like, I'm not playing piano anymore. I'm like barely singing. I've done a little bit of sewing, so that's been nice. But like other than that, like I really am pretty much focused on my health like all the time. So it's just hard to have time for anything else. So I wanted to give an update on that because, first of all, to explain why I'm so behind on my videos. But you know, this whole thing isn't just like an apology for that. I'm sure you understand. But it's also like I try to share the things that are going on in my life, and especially with my health, because I feel like they could be helpful to somebody else out there. And so I do want to share what's going on, but I just like, even with all of this stuff going on with my health, I have intended to make videos about it and to talk about it on, you know, online on Instagram and stuff. But I just even taking the time to like think about it and like get my thoughts together about it and like figure out how I'm going to talk about it is just, it's just hard to even like do that kind of mental work anymore for me. So I've just been kind of putting it off. But I decided today, like, I'm just going to make a video where I kind of explain what's going on, even though I don't have all the answers yet. And this will just be a little update on what's going on. I also started Accutane again last month. So that's another health thing that I'm doing. And I just have so much health stuff going on. Like, I'm spending all my time with that on the stuff that I mentioned. But then also, like, almost all my doctors are in Orlando. So it takes me like 30 to 45 minutes to drive each way to Orlando, usually to my appointments. So I'm spending so much time going to appointments and driving back and forth and all this stuff. And that's just kind of my whole life now. So that's fun. And then also it's been a lot of money that I'm having to spend, which luckily I have some help with. So that's been I'm very grateful for that. I wouldn't be able to do this without that. But I really would kind of like to do therapy again, like some different kinds of therapy, especially some kind of like somatic therapy type of stuff. But I just can't afford that right now. So I think that might actually be another factor in all of my physical health stuff, because I think I still have like a lot of trauma and like nervous system dysregulation that needs to get worked out that is probably contributing to some of this. But I can't afford to do everything, so I'm having to kind of like pick and choose what I'm doing at different times and try to spread it all out, and it's a lot to manage. It's like kind of like a full-time job having chronic health problems. So yeah, that's my life right now. So I don't want to say like if you enjoyed this video, because hopefully you didn't really enjoy it, but if you got something out of this video, if it was helpful or interesting or informative, or if you just want to show your support for me, you can click that like button, click that thumbs up so that everybody knows how much you like me and my videos. And if you want to see my future videos, which eventually there will be some, I don't know when, I don't know exactly what order I'm going to be doing them in, but I will be making videos at some point. You can subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss it when I do post them. And leave any comments you might have below. Especially maybe if you have any personal experience with any of the stuff that I've been talking about. Like if you have any words of wisdom or like things that I should be checking into, or like maybe other blood tests that you think I should get, or like anything like that, that would be helpful. Yeah, I think that covers it. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.